First thing we're going to do for this problem is to subtract 28x from both sides. So we get 4x cubed minus 9x squared minus 28x is less than or equal to 0. Now we want to factor it, and since it has a least common factor, a greatest common factor of x, we're going to factor that out. So we get x times 4x squared minus 9x minus 28 is less than or equal to 0. Now that trinomial factors, so we make two pair of parentheses, and it factors into 4x plus 7 times x minus 4. Now we take all three parts and we set them equal to 0, so we get either x equals 0, or x equals a negative 7 over 4, or x equals 4. Now that we've found our zeros, we make a number line. And on the number line, the negative 7/4 is the smallest, so it goes first, and then the 0, and then the 4. Now we're going to test. We're going to pick values and test them. So negative 7/4 is a negative 1 and 3/4, so I'm going to test a negative 2 to the left of negative 7/4. So in my test, my first test, I'm going to take my factored form. X is now a negative 2 times 4 times negative 2 is negative 8 plus 7 times a negative 2 minus 4, and that's supposed to be less than or equal to 0. That's a negative 2 times a negative 1 times a negative 6 is less than or equal to 0. It gives me a negative 12 is less than or equal to 0, which is true. Since it's true, that means I shade to the left of the negative 4, and since it's got an equal to part, then I put bracket shade to the left. Right now I want to test a number between 0 and between negative 7/4 and 0. So a good test number there would be negative 1. So I plug a negative 1 in. I get negative 1 times negative 4 times negative 1 times 4 is negative 4 plus 7 times negative 1 minus 4, and that's supposed to be less than or equal to 0. That gives me a negative 1 times 3 times a negative 5. And I want to know, is that less than or equal to 0? Negative times a negative is positive, so I get 15 is less than or equal to 0, which is false. Since it's false, I do not shade in there. All right, now I want to test a number between 0 and 4. So for that one, I will use, let's use 1. So I've got 1 times 4 plus 7 times 1 minus 4 is supposed to be less than or equal to 0. So that's 1 times 11 times a negative 3, which is less than or equal to 0. That gives me a negative 33, which is less than or equal to 0, so that's true. Since it's true, I'm going to shade in. So I get a bracket on 0, a bracket on 4, and I shade in between. And now I need to test something to the right of 4, so I'm going to use 5. So when I test the 5, I've got 5 times 4 times 5 is 20, so I get 20 plus 7 times 5 minus 4 is less than or equal to 0. That gives me 5 times 27 times 1 is less than or equal to 0. I don't even care what that multiplies out to be. I know it's a positive number, and a positive number is not less than or equal to 0, so that's false. So this is my graphical answer. Now I put that in interval notation, and for interval notation, I'm going left to negative infinity, and then I stop at a negative 7 over 4, bracket, union, I pick back up at 0, and I go to 4, bracket, and there's the answer.